Elliot Grant was a man who liked control. He ran Grant Motors like a ruler of a small kingdom. Every project, every worker, and every number on his screen had to move just the way he wanted. People said he was brilliant, but cold. He drank black coffee, planned every hour of his day, and never smiled unless a contract was signed. He had learned long ago that caring slowed you down. On a gray morning, he stood in the glass meeting room on the top floor. Outside, the city looked sharp and still. Inside, his senior team waited around the table, all in neat suits. The air smelled of steel, coffee, and tension. They were waiting for a man named Daniel Pierce. Daniel was a mechanic working on an important prototype engine that was supposed to change the company's image. He was late. Elliot tapped his pen on the table. He never liked delays. When the clock showed 10 minutes past the meeting time, the door opened. Daniel walked in holding a folder and wiping his hands with a rag. He had lines on his face that came from years of bending over machines. There was a small oil stain on his sleeve. "I am sorry, sir," Daniel said in a quiet voice. "The part delivery got mixed up, but I have fixed the alignment issue. The engine is ready now." Elliot looked at him the way a frozen lake might look at a stone. "You are late." He had investors watching the schedule. "This prototype was due 2 days ago. Your excuses cost money." Daniel's shoulders sank a little, but he did not look away. "I worked through the night, sir. I wanted it to be perfect. My daughter helped check the data. I only needed a few more hours." Elliot felt a strange twist in his chest when Daniel mentioned his daughter, but he pushed it away. Emotions were like rust. They ruined the machine of success. He stood up and walked around the table, every step echoing on the polished floor. "Perfection without discipline is failure," Elliot said. "We do not run a family shop here. We run a business built on time and precision. You have disappointed this company." Daniel's mouth opened slightly. "Please, Mr. Grant, I've been with this company for 7 years. I built half of the engines that carry your name." Elliot stopped beside him. The room was silent except for the low hum of the air system. He felt the eyes of his staff on his back. He wanted to show them that rules never bend. "You are dismissed," Elliot said. "Collect your tools and leave your badge at security." There was a long stillness. Daniel's hands trembled. For a second, Elliot thought he might speak, but instead Daniel just nodded. Then he gathered his folder and the rag and walked out of the room. The door shut with a soft click. No one dared say anything. Elliot turned back toward the wide window. "Meeting over," he said. The team scattered quietly. That evening, when the city lights glowed below his apartment, Elliot sat at his long steel table with a tablet in front of him. He tried to read his daily reports, but the numbers blurred. In his mind, he saw Daniel's rough hands and the small patch of grease on his sleeve. He saw how the old man had not shouted or begged, only accepted the blow and left with silent pride. He set his tablet aside and walked to the window. The city looked alive with motion, bright and cold. In the reflection on the glass, his own face looked like a stranger's. He remembered being young, long before Grant Motors, when he had worked with people like Daniel. Back then he had believed in invention, in machines that could help people. Somewhere, that part of him had gone quiet. A light beep came from his phone. It was a message from his assistant reminding him about tomorrow's meetings. Elliot typed a short reply and tried to return to his work, but the silence in the room felt heavy. He poured himself another cup of coffee, but even that tasted bitter. He thought about Daniel again, the way he said his daughter helped check the data. Dedication like that usually impressed Elliot, yet he had brushed it aside as weakness. A small part of him wondered if he had made a mistake. But his business mind told him he had protected company standards. When it grew late, Elliot finally turned off the lights and walked to his bedroom. The city sounds drifted through the glass, the soft rush of cars, the whistle of wind between tall buildings. He lay down, but he could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard Daniel's quiet voice saying that his daughter helped, repeated like an echo he could not silence. He had dismissed hundreds of workers before. None stayed in his head like this one. Something about the old mechanic carried a weight he could not name. When the night finally faded into morning, Elliot was still awake, staring at the ceiling and thinking about a man who once worked for him and a daughter he had never met. The next morning, the glass doors of Grant Motors opened with a sharp sound, and a young woman walked through them. Her steps were quick and sure. The workers at the front desk looked up with surprise because no one came in without an appointment. She wore a plain shirt and a worn jacket that showed she was not from an office. Her name was Maya Pierce, and anger burned in her eyes. She went straight to the elevator that led up to the top floor where Elliot Grant worked. By the time she reached his office, the secretary had already stood up trying to stop her. "Miss, you can't go in there without a meeting," the secretary said in a nervous voice. Maya took a breath and said, "Then you can tell your boss that the daughter of Daniel Pierce is here. And he ruined my father's life." That stopped the secretary cold. Before anyone could move, Maya walked straight through the wide door and entered the big office. Elliot was standing near the window, looking down at the city. When he turned, his face showed brief surprise. He remembered the last name at once. His voice was calm but distant as he said, "Miss Pierce, this is not the place for personal complaints. Security can show you out." Maya shook her head. "No, you will listen. My father gave 7 years of his life to your company. He worked late every single night. He fixed your mistakes, saved your engines, and never asked for more pay. Yesterday you fired him like he was a broken part." Elliot stayed silent for a moment. He looked at her face. There was strength in her anger, but also something familiar. A kind of quiet discipline he remembered seeing in old service members. He walked to his desk slowly. "Your father was late. He failed to deliver important work on time. That affects everything. Rules matter." Maya stepped closer. "Rules matter, yes, but humanity matters too. He was not late because he was lazy. Spent those hours fixing the design flaw that your own team missed. Saved your system. Do you even know that the prototype runs now because of him?" Her voice shook, but her eyes did not. Elliot felt a chill inside. "The team reported it was incomplete," he said quietly. "They were wrong, or they lied to protect their schedule," Maya said. "He finished it, but you never even gave him the chance to explain." The space between them filled with tension, like a wire pulled too tight. Through the large windows, the sound of engines from the city below drifted up faintly. Elliot saw her hands, small and strong, the hands of someone who worked with tools. "You work with him," he said. Maya nodded. "I have worked with machines since I was 13. My father taught me to love the sound of an engine when it comes alive. He cares for machines the way other men care for their families. All he wanted was respect." Elliot turned his gaze away for a moment, felt the taste of regret rising again, but tried to suppress it. "It is not personal," he said sharply. "I make decisions for the future of the company. Sentiment can destroy progress." "Then you are poorer than you think," Maya answered. "You speak about progress, but you killed the spirit that made your machines strong. You call yourself a leader, but you cannot even look at what you have broken." Her words hit like small hammers. Elliot had been insulted before, yet this felt different. It was not the sting of pride, but the sudden weight of truth. For a few seconds, he saw his reflection behind her in the window and thought it looked hollow. He opened his mouth to reply, but Maya turned to leave. At the door, she looked back and said in a calmer voice, "You can build 1,000 engines, Mr. Grant, but none will move if the people behind them no longer believe in you. My father believed in what he built, even when you did not." She gave one small nod and walked out. The door shut softly behind her. Elliot stood still for a long time. His heart beat faster than he wanted it to. The office seemed too large and the walls too smooth. He sat down and tried to read his reports, but each word blurred into the next. He saw her eyes again in his mind, filled with anger and grief, and something deeper he could not name. Later that day, he looked up the employee record of Daniel Pierce. He opened the file and found a note about previous service before joining Grant Motors. The old man had worked as a naval technician years ago and held high clearance. Elliot frowned as he scrolled. Some details were hidden with black marks and authorization codes, even in his own database. That was not normal. He leaned back in his chair as a strange feeling of unease settled in. The name Pierce rang in his head like a faint echo from somewhere far in the past. He tried to chase the memory, but it slipped away. Outside, the sunlight dimmed behind the clouds, and in that slow light, Elliot felt that something had shifted. For the first time in years, he did not know whether his actions were safe or foolish. When he finally left the office, the security guards nodded as he passed. He He walked through the parking lot, his mind still restless. The echo of Maya's words trailed him all the way to his car. He felt the smallest crack form in the armor he had worn for so long. Elliot Grant said nothing about it to anyone. He went back to his daily schedule, reading reports, signing papers, and attending calls. The alarm fell silent at last. Everyone around watched, unsure what to say. "You could have left me there," he said in a rough voice. "I was not raised to let anyone choke to death, no matter what they did," she answered. A broken laugh escaped from his throat. It was not his usual kind of laugh, not polished or practiced. He used them when he worked on the Navy rescue crafts. That knowledge stayed with me. Her words echoed in him. The mention of the Navy made something stir in his memory, a faint pulse of recognition. "Your father served in the Navy?" he asked. She nodded. Years ago, he was proud of it. But his record was sealed after a mission went wrong. Elliot felt the name Pierce grow heavier inside his mind. The sealed record he had seen in the company file now seemed more than a technical note. It felt like a door leading back to his own forgotten past. Before he could ask more, a deep rumble came from outside that was not thunder. The window shook. High above the building, dark against the clouds, a Navy helicopter circled and began to descend. The company flags flapped violently in the wind from its blades. Wow. Maya's hair whipped across her face as she stared upward. "That's a Navy call sign," she said firmly. The helicopter rested on the wet company lawn while rain poured in silver lines across the ground. The long blades slowly turned as uniformed Navy officers stepped out. Workers pressed against the windows, trying to see what was happening. The officer in front looked around, his coat shining with water and wind. Then he lifted a speaker and called out a name that nobody at Grant Motors had ever heard before. "Lieutenant Ethan Ward, report immediately." The sound of that name sliced through the storm. Elliot Grant stood frozen near the loading bay doors. The world around him blurred. That name was not a stranger's. It was his. It belonged to the man he had been before he became Elliot Grant. He felt his legs weaken for a second as memories he had locked away tried to push through. Maya watched his face closely. "Ethan Ward," she said slowly. "They are calling you, not someone else." Elliot could not speak. The officer stepped forward, saluting once. "Lieutenant, orders from command. We were told to locate you immediately." Murmurs spread through the crowd behind them. Workers looked at each other with wide eyes. The perfect CEO was suddenly a man with a secret name and a military past. Elliot finally moved forward. His voice came low but firm. "I am not lieutenant anymore. That part of my life ended years ago." The officer shook his head. "No, sir, it never ended. The past never closed." Someone reopened the record. "The command wants you back to answer for the unfinished mission. He said the man who served with you would come to meet you here." When the officer stepped aside, another figure appeared from behind him. It was Daniel Pierce, wearing a Navy dress uniform bright with medals. His face was calm, but his eyes held a storm equal to the weather around them. He walked toward Elliot with slow, measured steps while the rain hit his hat and shoulders. Everyone who had watched the earlier argument between them stared in shock. Daniel stopped only a few feet away. "Hello, Ethan," he said. His voice had no sign of uncertainty. Elliot looked at him with disbelief. "I thought you were dead," he whispered, forgetting everyone else. "I might as well have been," Daniel replied. "The world thought our whole team was gone. I stayed silent because they made me, until I saw what you turned into." Elliot swallowed hard. "You do not understand. I had to start over. I carried the blame for the failure of that mission. They told me the prototype and everyone on board were lost. I built this company to bury that past." Rain dripped from Daniel's chin as he said, "You buried the truth too. I still have the file, Ethan. You left behind not just the project, but the people who trusted you. You let the report call it operator error so you could disappear. I kept your secret because I thought you were dead. But then I found your name again, hidden behind new paperwork in a fancy office." Maya stood between them, her eyes moving from one man to the other. "You two knew each other before the company," she said. "Yes," Daniel answered. "We worked together on a Navy program to build safe rescue engines for storm operations. It was meant to save lives. But one test went wrong, and the command needed someone to blame. Your father took part of the blame with me. But I escaped it because I vanished." Elliot's voice was rough when he spoke again. "I never meant to hurt anyone. That day on the ocean, the system failed under pressure, and I believed you were gone." Daniel stepped closer. "And when you built Grant Motors, you used the same design. You never told the truth about where it came from." The sound of thunder cracked above them. Maya looked between them with hurt in her eyes. "So this is what all of this was about. My father worked for the man who abandoned him before and fired him again in this life. What kind of justice is that?" Elliot looked at her helplessly. I did not know it was him when I fired him. I swear it. Daniel motioned toward the officer. Command wanted me to confirm your identity. The old files match your face and prints. You will come back to the Navy compound tomorrow to explain the classified materials used in your engines. The officer nodded once and stepped back toward the helicopter, waiting. Daniel kept his eyes on Elliot. You cannot hide from the truth again, Ethan. Elliot looked down at his hands, rain dripping from his suit. Maybe I cannot, he said. But I can face it. He looked at Maya. Your father believes I ran away from honor. Maybe he is right. If I have one chance left to make peace with that old failure, I will take it. The helicopter blades began to rise again, kicking wind and rain around them. Daniel turned to his daughter and said quietly, Stay here tonight. I need to speak with them first. She nodded, her voice breaking a little. Be careful, Dad. As the helicopter lifted back into the storm, the noise filled the entire facility. Elliot stood there beside Maya under the pouring rain, feeling the weight of his two names pressing on him. The mask of the perfect CEO had cracked, and the man he once was stood exposed for everyone to see. Yet under the fear there was also relief, as if the storm had washed away a long-hidden lie. Maya looked at him with confusion and something close to sympathy. The night swallowed the helicopter's light, leaving only its echo fading into the distance while two people stood in the rain. Caught between past guilt and the chance of something new, morning sunlight crept through the gray clouds and spread across the city. Grant Motors looked quiet after the storm, but everyone in the building spoke in low voices. The news about the helicopter had run wild. Every worker knew that their proud CEO was not just a businessman. He had been a Navy officer with a hidden name. Elliot Grant, once called Ethan Ward, stood at his window in silence. His suit was ready, his tie straight, yet something in his face had changed. The old coldness had melted. The night's truth had left marks that no mirror could hide. He drove out to the Navy compound as ordered. As he entered the gates, soldiers recognized him from old files and saluted. The sound made his chest tighten. It dragged him back to a time when honor meant more than money. He walked with Daniel Pierce into a briefing room. The air smelled of metal, paper, and the faint bitter scent of coffee. Across the table sat three officers who knew everything. One of them, an older captain with a tired face, looked up. Lieutenant Ward, we have waited years for an answer. The program you both worked on was never supposed to vanish. That technology is back in the public sector through your company. Elliot lifted his eyes. Yes, sir. I continued the design after the Navy closed it. I hope to turn it into something safe, something that could help more people. Daniel sat beside him, jaw tight. You should have come to me. We could have fixed it together. The captain looked between them. This is not a trial. The command wants the engine for rescue use, not punishment. But we need both of you to complete the design. It belongs neither to the Navy alone nor to Grant Motors anymore. It belongs to those who need saving. Silence followed. Daniel's expression softened for the first time in years, turned toward Elliot. We finish it right this time. No lies. Elliot nodded. No lies. By evening, they were back in the Grant Motors lab. Workers had cleared the space and set up the old prototype engine that had caused all the history between them. Maya joined them, wearing her tool belt and safety glasses. She moved with calm purpose. For hours, father and daughter worked beside the man they once called enemy. Elliot readjusted circuits while Daniel checked fuel lines. Maya recorded every correction. At first, words came slow between them. Daniel would point and say that joint pressure is off, and Elliot would quietly fix it. Maya's steady hands kept them moving forward. Slowly, the tension faded under the rhythm of real work. Machines had a way of washing away pride. Late that night, as the last power test began, the engine came alive with a low hum. The sound was steady and strong. Blue lights ran through the glass tubes and brightened the workshop. Maya smiled. It works. Daniel looked at the gauge. It holds steady under full load. No collapse. Elliot took a small step back. For a man who had built his empire on cold design, this sound felt like a heartbeat returning after long silence. This was how it was meant to be, he said. For the first time in many years, Daniel reached out his hand. The project lives again. Elliot hesitated only a second before shaking it. This time it will not be hidden. 2 weeks later, a new ceremony took place at the coast. The Navy and Grant Motors stood side by side to launch the first working sea rescue craft, powered by their repaired engine. The blue and silver machine sat gleaming under the sun. Reporters snapped photos, but the crowd's attention stayed on the three people standing in front of it. Daniel in his uniform, Maya beside him, and Elliot in a plain jacket without a company logo. The captain gave a short speech about service and redemption. Then he called Elliot forward. "Lieutenant Ward, you once built a design that failed under storm pressure. Today, you bring back that design stronger and ready to save lives. You've closed the circle." Elliot nodded and stepped aside so that Maya could start the engine. She pressed the button, and the machine roared to life, water churning into white foam. Cheers rose from the gathered group. Daniel watched his daughter with pride, then turned toward the man who used to be his enemy. "She has your focus," he said quietly. Elliot smiled faintly. "She has your heart," as the rescue craft glided onto the open water. The old guilt inside Elliot's chest began to dissolve. The sea's wind carried away the weight of years of silence. Daniel stood beside him and said, "Maybe the past does not always have to sink us. Sometimes it can carry us forward if we face it." Elliot nodded, "And let it carry us." They stayed until the craft vanished into the bright line of the horizon. The sounds of shouting and celebration echoed behind them. Maya ran back toward them, her face bright, hair flying in the wind. She threw her arms around her father and then smiled at Elliot. For once, he did not feel like a man made of steel and rules. He felt human again, repaired like the engine they had just revived. The sunlight broke fully through the clouds as he looked at both of them and realized that what had begun in anger had ended in forgiveness. The machine was perfect. But the true repair was in their hearts, where the power of second chances now hummed, stronger than any engine.